Hey guys, this is episode 17 of the Sonic Road podcast. I'm really excited for today's guest. This gentleman has been in a band that I've been listening to for well over 20 years at this point. He's a founding member and guitar player for the rock instrumental band Pelican. Pelican just recently released their new record called Flickering Resonance, which is out now on Run for Cover Records. Pelican is out on tour right now, so check their tour dates on their Instagram or their website and see if they're coming into a town near you. So we'll just get right into it. Here's my interview with Laurent Lebec from Pelican. I'm a longtime fan of yours, actually.
Oh, nice.
Been listening to the band since, I don't know, man, 2008 or 9.
That is pretty far back.
Yeah, it goes back a ways. I just wanted to have you on. Man, Flickering Resonance is a killer album, man. I've been listening
Thank you.
to it all week. Yeah, you guys did a great job with it. I know it's been a while since you've been on a Pelican album. Did you do the last two singles with them, Adrift and Tending the Embers?
I did. Yeah, those were
Yeah.
the first two songs. They're not the first two recorded songs we did with me coming back. We had actually done two covers prior to that came out on Numero Group. One was a cover of a band called Karate. The other was an Unwound cover. So that was sort of our first dabbling back into recording with each other as four-piece, which we hadn't done in, about 10 years.
Yeah.
And then once we sort of, don't want to call it a proof of concept, but once we were like, hey, this feels good, we started to work on new stuff. And those were the first songs we worked on. Tending the Embers was one that I brought that the guys helped me polish up and structure, Trevor through a couple riffs in there as well. And then Adrift was very collaborative. It came from something that they had been toying with before, and then I added some things in there, and then we kind of, spun a tapestry.
Yeah, both those songs kick ass. It was great.
Thank you.
See you guys back doing that. You guys do a lot of singles, so sometimes it's a little hard to keep track. You sneak them in on us sometimes, which is
I
awesome.
know.
As a fan too. It's great. But what felt different stepping back in this time? I know you had taken a break for a while about it.
I did, yeah. So we started the band. It's been 20 plus years. Obviously, at this point, we were much younger people back then.
Yeah.
But it was our lives. We toured all the time. We were just all in. Like the thing that you never think you're going to get to do. When you get to do it, it's pretty magical and awesome and very fulfilling. You just play music, go on tour, come home, think about music. Do music related jobs if you can, odd door jobs and stuff like that. I ended up working for our label Hydra Head at the time for a little bit, just doing odds and ends. But I left, I think, because right as we were doing the sort of the tail end of what we all come to need, I honestly wanted to start a family with my wife at the time. And it was something we had talked about. And I kind of went on a bit of a tailspin, with having the stability at home in the type of situation that would allow me to kind of be around. And I sort of wanted to avoid the idea of, okay, cool, I'm home for a few months, I'm gonna be gone for a month. Some of it just felt not broachable. So it started to combine with some feelings that I had about being in the band in general, which were just I think I'm a little tapped out. I think in general, we were all a little fried.
Mhm.
I think I just gave myself an exit strategy because I was, again, just looking to shore up my home situation so that I could just jump into this dad thing full on. And I started bartending at this place called Big Star. I've been there for 15 years. And, in some ways, silly as it may be to say, I think a lot of musicians end up back into that life or working night jobs and stuff because some of it just feels eerily similar, and maybe
Right.
checks off some of those community boxes in general. So it felt good. And I was like, this is about as good as it's going to be. I kept doing the band for a couple of years. We recorded the Ataraxia EP. And then I was like, you know what, guys, I'm a little out of steam and I don't want you to wait around. I was worried about being asked to do tours and I'd say no, so I said, look, I think we just need a kind of a clean break. I know that it came as a surprise and I don't remember the gist of the conversation, but I remember it wasn't a fun conversation to have. We were also just trying to preserve friendships and end things amicably. I mean, there was some distance there for a little while. You don't jump back on the phone with those guys a week later and go, hey, how's it going?
Right.
So we all took a little bit of time and space. I ended up having some parallel life moments. Trevor has 2 kids now. So Larry has a son. Brian might be the only one that chose the lone wolf route.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was definitely some overlap and, events we'd see each other at, weddings, whatever. So we certainly stayed in touch And then COVID hit, and COVID for me was like a real sort of like reckoning with what was missing in my life. Cause, you know, the bar life, like for musicians too, like everything kind of collapsed, you know? So anything that was like people facing, it just, those jobs were kind of gone. So I did like odds and ends and whatever. And I was like, okay, now that my son's older and he's like asking about my guitars and asking about the band and stuff, and I was like, wait, I really do miss being in a band, you know? And I thought, well, there's, you know, I'm not going to get back in with those guys. They seem to be doing their thing or whatever. And then I think the moment presented itself when they wanted they were parting ways with Dallas, you know, and deciding what to do, and they had some commitments in Europe and called me up and asked me if I wanted to do a couple of festivals with them. And I think I remember Trevor being like, you know, if you want to think about it overnight, I was like, I'm pretty much ready to just say yes. Don't worry about the rest. I'll figure
Right.
it out, you
Yeah.
know? I was super excited, but I think I approached it a little cautiously, not for any other reason than I don't want to go all in super hard and be like effusive with, I'm so excited to be back. I've got like 80 million songs I want us to work on. I was like, let's just give these guys a chance to see if they still want to do this with me. You know, we're all different people. I think in general, age mellows you out and gives you a little bit of wisdom. You know, life years behind you gives you the gift of hindsight, and you can be like, okay, well, I handled this poorly or could have done this differently or whatever. And leaving those guys was definitely one of those moments like in the story of my life I would have liked to revisit and do a little bit differently, you know. I don't know, say like being able to say, listen, I know it's going to be weird, but I need a year away to
Right.
like figure my stuff out
Right.
rather than I'm done.
Yeah. Right.
But you know, when you're younger, you sometimes you have an easier time with the hard and fast, like this is it, our friendship's over, and you
Right.
look back and go, well, that was stupid. So it was great to come back, and you know, the chemistry, the friendship, we're like brothers, you know. So you
That's
think
fantastic.
about the miles we've logged, like it's, you know, like you finish each other's sentences, you know how to push each other's buttons in the best way, but also in terms of music, it's like a communicative language between the four of us that you know, writing with those guys is very easy. It's this go around where there's less of a I brought this riff, this is one of my favorite riffs I wanted to be in the song, and more of a I got this idea, you know, if you like it great, if you don't, that's cool, no big deal. I think we're a lot more free in that regard of wanting for things to sound a particular way.
Right.
So I think this record in particular, I wrote a good chunk of it, but you know, everything I wrote gets interpreted by all of them. Things get shifted around, melodies get changed once I hear what Trevor's doing. Something that's could have been heavy sounds better, not heavy. You know, there was a lot of collaboration and open-endedness, and it was great, man. I went too fast, you know.
Yeah.
You can't wait for it to come out, and then once it's out, you're like, oh, I wish it could come out again.
Yeah, right. Do the whole process. It sounds like you guys have a really good creative space now, getting a little older. I relate to everything you're saying because I've been in bands too with friends for a long time, and
Yeah.
sometimes you got to step away and then come back with a fresh pair of eyes. But it sounds like you guys getting older together, it's more fun than ever. And that's a collaborative effort. It's really cool in the studio, I think. I mean, it's because you go in with an idea and it comes out a little different, especially if everybody's throwing their 2 cents in. So, yeah, I relate to that a lot. So it's awesome. I mean, it reflects on the record. I mean, the record just feels massive and layered. I mean, how did the writing process unfold? And for this one, compared to the other albums, was it, you know, were the other albums more collaborative, or were you just kind of
So if I look at them one by one, you know, the first demo, the first EP was, you know, some ideas that I had that were a lot slower, doomier than some of the stuff we were doing. We had a grind band at the time that we started called Tusk, and that's how Trevor, Larry, and myself started playing music with each other. And those were all like just super blurry, fast, like Napalm style grindcore, you know.
right? I don't,
And
yeah,
I was writing these like slow, doomy, earth like things, you know, drawing some influence from Sleep and Earth and you know Burning Witch and High on Fire and stuff, and being like, man, I kind of want to do that sort of thing, you know, Goat Snake. Like, there's really the beginning of all the stonery doom stuff. Less so, kind of like you know the classic doomy things like Cathedral and Saint Vitus or whatever, which I like sort of knew, but at the time wasn't like super tuned in on. But it started there. But really, when we incorporated Trevor into the band, like we all felt really comfortable going into these melodic spaces, kind of informed by, some of the hardcore we'd grown up with, some of the post-hardcore stuff, just not afraid to get melodic. It didn't have to be, and we weren't like angry, sad, dark dudes. Not that that's who makes heavy music, but
Right.
whatever came from us, always ended up veering into these, I don't know, like major chord sort of triumphant moments, Maybe that's like listening to a bunch of hum back then and stuff like that. But it was always sort of there. And each record we took more and more chances with that stuff and then played with like faster tempos as a result of being on the road more. I think each record has like a good cachet of songs that I drove and songs that like Trevor brought to the table that we all worked with each other on. But right around What We All Come to Need, Brian really steps to the front as a writer.
Mhm.
And on like songs like Strung Up from the Sky and Inch Above Sand, those are all like bass driven songs that he brought to the fold and, sort of were built around some of his ideas. When I leave the band, Trevor and Brian on those two records for Becoming a Nighttime Stories really partnered up and took control. So me coming back in for this one, there's three full-fledged writers in the band.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Right.
and so it's less, okay, we're gonna fit some bass parts around, Laurent's riffs, or me going, I'm gonna write some guitar stuff around Trevor. And there's the the two guitars and the bass, like really talking to each other as like equal partners with the same sort of voicing. And then, of course, right around What We All Come to Need as well, like a lot of what Larry brought rhythmically really starts to come into focus as well. So we're just, it's like everybody's got a quarter of the pie, and we all speak as loudly as each other. There's less of a dominant vision. And I think this record, more than any of the others, really reflects that as like a cohesive whole. Like you can hear parts of each of I think of each of the other records without actually any of the songs sounding like it could have been from any other record.
Right.
Like Indelible, I've had some people come up and kind of reminds me of Australasia, but obviously it doesn't because the tempo's totally different. And that sort of pops up. Wandering Mind, the last track, was built around just the bass part,
I was
which,
going to ask you about that because
yeah.
yeah, that's a killer bass part, and then the phrasing of the guitars over top of that. It's, man, great song.
Thank you. And it's a good example of how I don't think you could write a voicing like that on guitar and then come up with that bass part
Right.
as an after fact. It's easy. It's fun when you get a really driving bass line because then you can kind of spin, around it, go in and out, and that the anchor is there and it's driving the song along. Just the little waves of sound. The bass is the boat, if you will, like just kind of coursing through.
Right.
It's really fun as a guitarist to get to do that. And for me, like after writing 4 or 5 songs on there, Trevor was like, I think if you bring another one, the sonic blueprint is going to be a lot of that stuff. So
Right.
let's shift and see what Brian has in the tank. And then, but to be able to say that is, the type of like maturity that I don't think we would have had years back. It would have been like, well,
Right.
I wrote this song. I really want to do it,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so on. Or I don't think what you're doing with that riff is it's the right fit. You're just lacking the willingness to be critical, because it's hard to be critical. It's hard to say, I don't know about that, or maybe that's not working. But now I'm like, I don't care, man. I'm just happy to be around doing this.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's going to give you guys a lot more options for material later. I'm sure you have a lot left over then, don't you? I mean, or a lot of
Yeah, we do. We've already started on, we've got a couple songs that we started that are fleshed out guitar wise, are completely fleshed out. There's one that we actually have coming out at the end of the year on an EP, which we haven't announced yet. So I'm not going to say too much more about it, but it should be a nice bridge to what we have coming up after. I think we're just going to hit the ground running, and just kind of keep going. We're trying to balance real life stuff too. Not
Sure.
that being in a band isn't real life, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't like living a lifestyle of being able to tour for a living, which I think it just gets harder and harder anyways, especially in this day and age. But we've got a good chunk of touring coming up, announced Hopscotch Festival and Rally. We've got the 2 weeks here in the States. We've got another week and a half of festivals in Europe.
That's awesome.
Some other stuff for 2026 that we're working on already. There's enough going on to keep us motivated about the next chapter and what's next. So I'm super stoked, to be honest. And I'm really feeling excited about just this sort of like melting hot moment we're having where I feel like we could just pretty much kind of bring any influence to this at this point. And there's going to be, it's not like this sort of like self-reflective concern. Does this song sound like us, or should we do this or whatever? It's let's just go, let's just
Yeah.
do what's feeling natural.
Yep. Yep. I talk about music and playing music like that all the time.
Yeah.
I was curious because have you guys incorporated any more acoustic material? You haven't done that too much since The Fire in Our Throats. So you did that a little
Right.
bit on that one.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility too, just to kind of weave in it out of the electric and the acoustic? Because you guys did such a great job with that material on that.
Yeah, we loved it. And I think part of that at the time was, Trevor was my roommate. We wrote everything on acoustic then. We still write everything clean.
Yeah.
At least I do. I'll like when I write, even if I'm strumming the electric guitar, I rarely plug it in because I don't want anything to impact the sort of the first sketches, you
Right.
know? Because once you turn on the electricity and the distortion, you immediately veer. I mean, I veer heavy. So
Yeah.
if I'm starting to write with everything on, all I'm gonna write is these barn burning
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
heavy songs. So if I start clean, I'm just listening to myself a lot more.
Right.
Anyway, but when we were roommates, we would just write acoustically on our porch because we had like other roommates, people living above us, people living
Yeah.
below us, whatever. So a lot of those early sketches were on acoustic, and that just meant that there were songs that we were like, maybe we should keep this acoustic. So there was one on Australasia, one on City of Echoes, one on A Fire in Our Throats. And then after that, we just sort of stopped because the Herwigs had moved to LA at the time. We were living in separate houses. Trevor then moved to North Carolina for a bit. Like there was just less sitting around the campfire, so to speak.
Mhm.
We did incorporate a little bit of acoustic guitar as a layer on the song Flickering Stillness. That's about it. I do think it's something that will come up again. I think it'll just come up naturally,
Right.
and we'll see where it goes. But one could even say there's less clean parts in general in this one. There's definitely some songs where the throttle's down a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's less overall true downtime. Even though I think there's good dynamics throughout the album kind of like pushes along, without there
Yeah.
being too much, oh, it got sleepy here for a minute. And I think that was intentional. Everything now is really informed by being on stage too, because we wrote a lot of songs earlier on that I don't want to say are not fun to play live, but to us like just don't translate as well in terms of the place we want to get to in our own heads.
Right.
And they did back then, but now you don't want to be on stage 5 weeks out of the year and have it feel like a chore.
Right.
So we're really, I think, informed now more so than maybe, oh, actually, the last few records, maybe they were, but hey, this is going to end up on a stage at some point. So you kind of just end up writing with that in mind a little bit too.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I've been there too.
Yeah.
We pull that off live. I don't know, man. We would better drop back a little bit. I wanted to ask you, like, you guys are an instrumental band, but music flows with like an emotional storytelling a little bit.
Yeah.
You get these visuals in your head when you're listening to the band because there's a lot of dynamics with it, even without lyrics. So
Yeah.
were there any particular ideas or feelings or imagery that you guys were chasing in the writing process for this album? Because there's a lot of, you can let your imagination run wild if you just listen to it.
Yeah. I mean, certainly it never starts with a concept that then where songs are written around it. It's like the songs get written. I would say they are, like a postcard, or the record's a postcard of a time and place, right? So
Right.
we're in this moment together, we're writing, we're doing this like sharing of ideas and experiences and creating this thing together. And once we've got like a batch of songs, we're like, well, what's it telling us? Like looking back on it, what does it say about this moment we're in and what we shared and what we went through and what we ended up creating? And then you fit song titles around that. And it's, what does it evoke in me? About Cascading Crescent, perfect example. I was thinking about that song
Yeah.
and the riffs in it, and I was walking at night and I saw like a waxing moon, and I was like, ooh, that's like and I was like, whoa, Cascading Crescent. I don't know why I thought of the word cascading, but I imagined it having this sort of drippy, sort of watery, it's like an image that comes to your mind. And then, but the word Cascading Crescent to somebody will be something different. It's funny how once it's attached to the song, though, you're like, well, I could never call it anything else. It just sort of
Right.
takes on, Gulch, that song had to me like this sort of, I was watching this idea of the sun rising behind a mountain, and you just see this huge gulch in front of you, and just like life coming over just the earth in the morning.
Right.
I was in Sedona once and we watched the sunrise from the top of a mountain years back. And it was one of those moments where you're freezing, it's 5 in the morning, and then all of a sudden the sun comes up and you go from freezing to warm
Yeah.
with this like insane light. And you're like, those are the types of, we're obviously like outdoorsy, nature loving people. I think everyone should be, man. It's one of the last true feelings of connecting to earth.
Right.
So that's for sure a theme that shows up in the music. You could tell we're very landscape based.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as far as like human beings, themes around like the positivity and sort of the nurturing elements of our relationship as friends, and what it has meant for us and our families and our community, that obviously exists within, I think, some of the positivity in there. I don't think we weren't really operating from a place, as bleak as things may be in some ways. We've always been a band that I think is trying to edge us all to feeling something positive. It's not with the intention of being like transcendent or whatever. And certainly I would never say like we're a transcendent band. I'm not, there's nothing guru like about the music or whatever. I'm not preaching like a particular like life methodology, but I do think that music can be very transportive, and any piece of music can bring you to feel energy or strength or feel sad or whatever, but it can be very moving. And I think if we can accomplish anything, I would like for our music to be moving in some capacity to someone somewhere. I don't, we once in being an instrumental band, you almost set yourself up for, you're going to have a limited audience. You write 10-minute songs, you're not, there's no hit single coming out of that or whatever,
Right. Good.
So
That's what I say.
yeah, I mean, we're not like, and it's not like an act of defiance. I think I think we're all conscious of the fact that none of us have wanted to cut corners for anybody or anything. We just want to do the thing that feels most transparent and authentic. And for that to be relatable to others, that's the gift, right? And if it wasn't, as long as we were honest with each other, then we could be in our own minds, the world's greatest local bar band with the same 20 people that come out. But I think that's the beauty of it. I know that there's some bar band out there playing the local dive that is like having the time of their lives, and that's what it's all about. Doesn't have to be. Yes, there is something cathartic and fairly engrossing and amazing about playing for a large audience or a big festival and stuff, but in the end, like, it starts with us and a moment of connection with the audience, big or small, and that's really that's the crux of it.
Yeah. Getting back to the song titles, because you guys, fantastic job with the song titles. You have great titles. And it's a strange conversation, because you guys are an instrumental band, but are any of the titles or the titles of the records, are they ever informed by a more expansive form of writing like poetry? Do you guys write like that and then it informs
I
the music a little bit?
Yeah,
I'm curious about that because that's how your music flows, again, like what we were just saying.
our songs are not. I mean, certainly, there's consumption of poetry on a personal level and literature and other music for sure, movies, anything really, just like living life and living art wherever and whenever you can. I think we are definitely aware that compositionally we are not tethered to any sort of like classic formula for songwriting. So there are definitely moments when, you know, I might write a riff that has a little tail at the end, and Larry will go, the tail is cool, but I don't know how to wrap that up and where to put the one. So Trevor will like help me shape things. But like in terms of, going back to a motif or whatever, it really just happens organically. I think we are conscious of not trying to write the same thing twice. So if a
Right.
particular structure sounds one way, we'll try to avoid treading the same ground, particularly on the same record. I've certainly had progressions where that sounds too much like X song, and I'm like, really? I don't know. And we'll put it on, and I'm like, ah, shit, it kind of does, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, and we don't. There's no alternative tunings. It's always B standard,
Oh, really?
and
Okay.
yeah, and so you know, yeah, it might be fun to do the super unknown trick, where every song is in a different tuning. And that does really lend each of the songs on that record. I love that record, by the way, but
Masterpiece.
different personality. And we could do that, but then there's also, I don't know, we're kind of stubborn. There's the idea of, maybe let's just see how much we can do and accomplish within this box.
Yeah.
But that B standard with the gauge that we use in that setup, like that's a lot of the reverberating energy
Mm.
exists in the songs. If they were an E standard, you know, they would sound like we were trying to play like, you know, Riot Fest or something. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's some hooky poppy stuff in there. So, but the fact that it exists in a much lower sort of like baritone like groove gives it, I think, a different direction. I'm not sure that I necessarily answered your question, but I think that we do write not with the intentionality of like poetry per se, but
Right.
without trying to write in a particular narrative structure.
Right on. Cool. Yeah. I was going to ask you, you may keep reading my mind. I was going to like guitar tone in your gear next because
Yeah.
what we all come to need, this record kind of does remind me of that because of your
Yeah.
tone. As
Yeah.
soon as I heard this new one, I was like, oh yeah, that's the ticket. That's old school.
Yeah.
And like, how do you achieve that? Do you play around with gear or do you pretty much keep it?
I do. Interestingly enough, like when we talk gear, like I always want to jump on the gear talk, you know, and
Yeah.
Trevor's like he has his sound. He got to the sound that he wanted, and that is the sound he chases. You know, he plays a Model T once he got actually he played an Ampeg V4 for a while. Now he plays a Model T. He plays the second era, the one that has like the mid control on it.
Yeah.
And once he settled into that, like he just lives it. It's a combo of an SG with the Model T, and he uses an Earthquaker. I think
Oh,
it's Palisades. I can't remember the one. I think it's Palisades. It's like a
yeah.
three-stage, three-channel distortion, three clipping options. You know, it has a light clipping, heavier, and then like a boost on it or whatever.
Right on.
And
Yeah.
it sounds great. He's got this sort of like rich, very MIDI, girthy kind of tone. I play a Les Paul. I've always played a Les Paul. So, you know, SG Les Paul, totally different.
Right.
I think between the two of us, we kind of wrap up all the sonic frequencies. You know, some of the leadier stuff that he'll play on the SG will cut in a certain way, but some of the lower stuff that I'll play on the Les Paul will capture some of those lower mids and bassier tones. He and I think, just have a tone that blends well. I currently play a rocker verb, a 100 rocker verb, and you know, I played a Model T. I played so many different things. I played a V4. I played a Model T years back. I even went back to wanting to have just a great crunchy rock tone and played a Marshall JCM 900 for a long
Wow.
time.
Old school.
Yeah, is the what we all come to need is a combo of Model T and JCM 900. And I ended up doing a combo of dual rectifier and rocker verb on the new one.
Dang.
So they were both through to like just through Mesa cabs. I really like the Mesa cabs. I feel like they have a ton of punch to them.
Yeah.
And you know, Sanford recorded the recent one he did Australasia. He's done some other stuff for us, but we've done records with different people. But I think as much as the sound evolves, it always like references what came before it. I've always been pursuant of like I want clarity to still be there. Like I want it to be heavy, but I want people to pick up on the nuance and the dynamics. And so the new one was an interesting study in how to achieve that while maintaining some of that just wall of sound aspect of stuff. And by having the two amps on, you know, one having just sort of a girthier, sort of massive tone, and then the dual rectifier was kind of dialed back and added more as like an overdrive. It just allows you when you're mixing to go, let me pull the orange back a little bit for this part, turn up the dual and get some of these lighter notes to cut through, especially when, you know, my picking would start to, on some of the busier runs or whatever, my picking would lighten up. He would push up the dual so that some of those notes would kind of come back into the mix and not be
Right.
overwhelmed by the other stuff, you know. And I'm not like a classically trained player. The only advice I've ever been given is when you're recording, just dig in.
Right.
Dig in and like obsessively dig in, because otherwise things will just sound a little muted, you
Right.
know.
Right.
You need that cut, and no pedal's going to give you that cut. And I tend to play lighter, but when we record, I try to push in a little
Yeah.
bit.
Do you use your
Um,
live rig
yeah,
or do you play?
yes.
Yeah.
No, it's same guitar, everything. But you know, again, like when you've done a track or two, you just go, well, what's missing? And then you can fill in the blanks, you know.
Right.
There's so many tools at your disposal now.
Yeah.
You know, you can reamp, and so we definitely recorded with a DI out so that we had that possibility. We didn't end up reamping anything. But we did. There's some parts where I'm in the left and the right, Trevor's coming up the center,
Uh-huh.
where we wanted some of his leadier things to kind of really be in the center of things and me kind of around it. You can hear that on Wandering Mind at the end where it gets like really layered and heavy.
Right. Okay.
And then there's the track Pining Forever when it builds after the clean part. I'm definitely left and right and he's in the center. But otherwise, man, it's honestly just rocking in the studio. You
Yeah.
know, there's not too many, yeah, there's reverb, there's delay, there's a couple of other little Easter eggs in there, but there isn't like a ton of modulation, to be honest. It's mostly just like drums, bass, and a bunch of layered riffs, some
Cool.
fuzzy parts, some other, but it's probably of all the records, the one that to me, it's clean, it's articulated. It's probably the jammiest one, like where it sounds kind of like a jam.
Yeah.
And I think if anything was going to be an entry point back into being a band together, this would be the record that I would want it to be. The next one maybe, maybe we'll have some more studio vibey things, but to come back with something like that wouldn't have made much sense. It was nice to come back and be like, hey, this is what the four of us wrote, and this is what it sounds like in a studio.
Okay. Yeah. Do you guys cut live together or?
We do for drums, and then once the drums are good, we layer on top of it.
Cool.
And then we'll go song by song so that it's not like cruise through all the bass parts, cruise through all my parts. We'll just go song by song and give ourselves, it's a little lengthier time wise, but it gives you a chance to not be like, oh man, I should have used that amp on
Right.
that song, but that was finished last week or whatever. So
Right. Yeah. That makes
yeah,
sense.
I like that approach.
Yeah. Song by song. Yeah. It seems a little more fun too than
Hmm.
hammering out a bunch of bass and a bunch of drums at the same time. You can really get the best performance for the song, basically serving the song, doing
Yeah.
it's just an opinion, but everybody does it different. Well, let's kind of switch gears. I want to hear about the new label, at least for you guys, Run for
Oh
Cover,
yeah.
a label that's known for more, I guess, more indie and emo type,
Yep.
material. But how did that partnership come together?
So we had we were at the end of the contract with Southern Lord, and
Great label.
yeah, absolutely. And COVID, did its thing. When we regrouped and wrote these new songs, we had just done the reissue campaign with Thrill Jockey for all the older stuff. And
Mhm.
that's great to have a home-based label that was able to be like reinvigorate some life back into those records and get them back in front of people.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think I think learning from that, we were like, if you're going to be a band 20 years in and you had like the world give you a pause and you're back, it might be interesting to not wear the same shoes and just try something different.
Sure.
So we just started asking ourselves, Trevor and I really, what are labels that are out there that are fresh and new and doing things that are in some ways relatable, but are also exciting? And are they having success with a younger cadre of bands? There's a label called Pure Noise that was cool. Close Casket was awesome, Run for Cover. So we just recorded this 2-song tape, put out the tape ourselves, and started having conversations.
Mhm.
And one of the conversations we had was with the guys that Run for Cover, and they were so passionate about metal, punk, hardcore, where they were at, where music was going, less so than, some label conversation can be like, I've been doing this for 40 years. I'm not super enthusiastic about the future of the music business. I don't know, guys, let's just do it, but I can't make any promises.
Right.
You just want to be around like energy and enthusiasm
Absolutely.
to push you to places that are new and to build new bridges and new connections. So there was familiarity because we all could self-reference bands we liked from back in the day. We could have a conversation about ISIS or Coalesce or
Yeah.
things like that, but also be, intrigued by things that they were doing. And first of all, they hit the release of this record so well, just on a professional level. It's out, it's everywhere. You can find the vinyl. When the first run ran out, the second one was right out. There's just things that have been very easy to do with them and wonderful, but also they're just fun to talk to and to talk about the future with. And I think for us, that's really necessary at this point. So, and the record looks great and sounds good to
Mhm.
us. So far, it's win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah. I get that completely. I'm in that stage of my life too. Like the next band I'm in, I just want some enthusiasm around it.
Yeah.
I think you got the Debbie Downer around you. It's not inspiring for music, especially, but art and
Not when you're 47, I just,
right.
I just, come on, dude,
Yeah,
please.
we're the same age pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it,
Yeah.
man. Totally relate. The Cleveland connection. I see you wearing an Integrity shirt there. You guys
Yes.
played here a lot. The band released live at the Grog Shop a number of years ago. Any standout memories or shows here?
Cleveland is, for us, more so than Indy or Milwaukee or whatever. It's kind of like an East Coast market, it's the first time you like venture out from your little Midwest hub,
Yeah.
So some of the earlier shows were like, yeah, we're in Ohio, like we're out there, like the van made it
Yeah.
further than 3 hours, So
Your adventure,
one,
rock and roll there.
yeah, and when we were on Hydra Head, Keel Hall was a band on Hydra Head, and we were big Keel Hall fans.
Right.
So it was just like the chance to play at the Grog Shop with Keel Hall early on was like so fun. And we played Emissions from the Monolith a couple times in
Yep.
Youngstown way back in the day. And that was one of the first festivals where we were really super welcomed by those people. And they were like all in. It was like an instrumental doom band. Let's go. And I remember like checking in on, I don't know if you remember stonerrock.com. It was like a
Oh,
web
yeah.
board. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember going on there once and people were like, has anybody heard of Pelican? And I just saw them at Emissions. Like, and I tell Trevor and Larry, like, you guys, like, a little bit of buzz is building, around the band. And it was like, where? I'm like, on stonerrock.com, like, where else?
Yeah.
Because there wasn't, these are like the early beginnings of networking. We're like barely post AOL at this point. So you're looking to, we're not placing ads in Maximum Rock and Roll or whatever. So touring and getting the word out was still pretty raw, even, well, certainly by today's standards, where you can pretty much announce a show and the entire world knows about it in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And there's also thousands upon thousands of bands competing for the same markets and the same audience all the time. It's remarkable how many bands are out there. So I think that Cleveland and Ohio is just like a must market for us, And then anytime you go out east, you're going to go through. We've had good shows in a couple of different cities, but yeah, it'll be great to hit Cleveland this go around as well, especially doing the new record, and
Oh, yeah.
we're excited.
The Monolith show, the festival, man. That was at the night Bingy, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was correct.
I saw Clutch there once. I think I did. They were there. I saw the tops.
Yeah.
That place was amazing. It was an old farm.
Such a strange little space. Yeah. And like, really, you just knew, that's like a real example of true tender love and care for music. When people can bring bands, and it's cool, big bands would be like, hell yeah, we're going, because that's an important thing to post up at and get in front of people. For us, it was a really cool opportunity to be extremely loud for people that were into it. It's crazy how resonant it can feel to be like, we're out of town and people are paying attention. Like those first feelings are getting that kind of response, playing in LA for the first time, or San Francisco, playing Bottom of the Hill, stuff like that, where you're like, somebody out on the coast is aware of my band and coming to the show. Those are really impactful, like, first moments,
Absolutely. Yeah. Unmatched. It feels good, and like it's redeeming in a way, because I'm sure you guys go through times where, fuck, why am I doing it's like before you guys, you have your own audience now, but it's back in the early stages of a band, it can be kind of tough.
Yeah, and I think not having vocals intrigued people enough to check it out. There's certainly, we were lumped into some categories that maybe didn't make that much sense. I don't think we're quite anything really. I think we're just a combination of a bunch of different things. The post rock community like embraced us, but then we weren't like expansive enough, or the sketches of music didn't quite hit the same cathartic points that some other post rocky, like, kind of ambient bands hit. And that's okay. It was never where I think we touched on that a little bit on Fire in Our Throats, and then kind of moved on from it a little bit. So if anybody got into us for that record and then put on City of Echoes, they're probably like, what the hell just happened?
It was a big change. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it
it's
was
a
cool.
big, yeah, it was good for us. And I think now, I think I'm happy to say that, like, we could play songs. There's some songs from each of those records we wouldn't play, but there's songs from each of the records that we would play.
Right.
So we bring out some stuff on the new one, on the new tour, some older songs that I think are going to be fun for people to hear.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'll be there, man. The tour starts, it'll be July 17th.
Yep.
at the Beachland in Cleveland. So we get
Yeah,
the show, boom.
you do. You do.
Cleveland gets neglected a lot. So I'm glad,
Not by us.
yeah, great. Because I mean, a lot of the bigger bands that are doing well, they skip right over us for some reason. I think it has to do with like taxes on merch or something. I've read something.
Yeah,
But hey, man, come on, quit neglecting Cleveland. Everybody.
yes.
So I appreciate you guys coming to town always, and I'm sure the rest of the fans do too. But so what's next? You got a tour coming up. What's going on after that? You were going to Europe too, right?
Yeah, we have a week and then we're going to Europe, play some festivals and a couple of other club shows. First time back in England in a very long time. So that'll be exciting.
That's awesome.
Playing Monocle Tour, which is a big festival in France. That'll be fun too. Then we take a couple weeks off and then we go to Raleigh for a show, big festival there. And then after that, get back to writing. Got a couple things lined up for early 26 and then some bigger tours we're like figuring out, sketching out now. Got to fit the real life somewhere in between, but we wouldn't do it if we didn't love it. So I think the one thing I can say is as fun as it was to do the Circles tour, we were mostly playing new stuff to people who hadn't heard it.
Right.
Because we had just finished the record and it's like you're not going to finish a record and then go relearn a set's worth of old stuff, knowing that like in June you'll be again playing the new stuff. So we were like, let's just treat that tour as like the West Coast tour for the new record. So that was just I think a real interesting test of like people's like endurance with us and for us, because if you go see a band you haven't seen in 8 years and they're playing all new stuff, you might be like, oh man, come on, I want to hear my faves. But the shows went over well. So for us, what's exciting about this one that's coming up is we actually get to play these songs for people that will have heard them for a couple months. So it's a whole layer of engagement with the crowd when they know the songs that you don't get otherwise.
That's great. I'll be one of them. So
yeah.
I'll see you guys at the Beachland on Thursday. If I see you, I'll come say hi.
Please do.
But thanks for talking to me, man.
It's a pleasure.
That's about all I got for now. But yeah, let's do it again when the EP comes out, and we'll keep talking, man, as you guys
please do
keep progressing. What's that?
I said, please do. Yeah, well, I'm always down to talk about the band. So
awesome. All right, I'll be in touch for sure, and hopefully, maybe I'll get to say hello on Thursday. It'd be awesome.
No, please do. Yeah, we love to mingle. We don't like hang out in the green room and never poke our eyes out. So
awesome. Yeah, I don't
please do.
Has a green room, do they, or is it downstairs? I don't know. Well, look at that.
No clue.
And hang it out.
Yeah.
Out back. Thanks for talking to me. Appreciate it.
You got it.